want to bring in now Bloomberg Political's national political reporter Sahil, Kapur, also Republican strategist and Washington Examiner columnist Gianno, Caldwell, MSNBC political analyst and president of Brilliant Corners Research and Strategies, Cornell Belcher, and also Democratic strategist Joel Payne. To all of you, welcome. Glad to have you with me this afternoon as we're going to jump in and try to cover a whole lot. I want to start with what's happening there in Richmond as we saw President Trump sign a congressional resolution this past week condemning white supremacists in the wake of last month's violence in Charlottesville. So, Cornell, we start with you. How far does this go when it comes to calming the outrage that we initially saw over his public remarks after that violence?
It doesn't go nearly far enough. You know, it is say one thing, do the other. I mean, this is a pattern of the president saying one thing and then doing the other, and it's a flip-flopping. Look, if you look at the course of Trump's rise from you know, Mexicans are rapists and murderers to blacks, you don't have anything to lose. There is a pattern here. There's a reason why people think that Donald Trump has white nationalist sentiments. And when you look at the people, in fact, Bannon, Miller, et cetera, who are, in fact, white nationalists he put in the White House, you know, there is a reason why people of color think that this president is a little too close and a little too coddly with white nationalists. So he has a long way to go to soothe this, but it's awfully important right now that we soothe it, because I think, you know, if you look at the protests going on, and hopefully we'll talk about the protests in Missouri right now, we are at a very pivotal point in our country, particularly as we begin to see a nation where we are growing more and more diverse, and in sometime in the next decade and a half, you know, we're close to a majority-minority country. These are issues that we have to solve for, and we need solutions from the president and from the Congress. Yeah, you're saying a long way to go. I want to get Gianno's take on this, because Gianno, you wrote about the struggles of being a black Republican. Yeah. In the wake of Donald Trump's comments, saying that if Trump wants to be the uniter-in-chief that he claimed to be on the campaign trail, it's time for him to establish a real dialogue directly from the White House. What is he doing? What is he not doing?
You know, that's a good question. I thank you for reading that there. I've always said that this Charlottesville issue would be Donald Trump's Achilles heel. We've seen throughout the entire election cycle, general primary, and even in the White House, there's not been an issue that's stuck around like this has. And this is one in which the president could be the uniter-in-chief. He hasn't put in a lot of work doing that, but as of this past week, I was glad to see that he met with Senator Tim Scott to talk about these issues, because this is a situation, a dynamic in our country that has a very historical perspective. The marginalization of African Americans in this country is very real. Systematic racism continues in this country. Obviously, we've made great progress, and I'm happy to say that we're all on this television screen right now, and I think that speaks to the progress in which we've made in our country. But President Trump has a very unique role here, and one in which he has to legitimately present himself as being open to that candid conversation, and obviously having the conversation with Tim Scott was a good first step. Yeah. But certainly not the last. Well,
I need to ask you very quickly, because I'm sure you heard a conversation earlier about ESPN and the president, the back and forth with that. Very quickly, Gianno, what is your thought on the conversation, especially given your stance?
Well, I know that the comments I didn't necessarily agree with. I don't think that President Trump is a white supremacist. Certainly, he's given a comfort blanket to those who are white supremacists. So we can be very clear and honest about that. I think when you're a sports figure or you're an analyst on that kind of channel, sometimes politics should stay out of it. And that's just my personal view. She has the right to say whatever she wants to say, but considering the platform in which she holds, it might not have been the smartest of moves, in my view.
All right, I want to turn now to the Republican outrage now over the deal, no deal. What level of a deal are we at when it comes with, you know, Dreamers, DACA, the debt ceiling, and all of that? You've got funding from the government. So, Joel, your take as a Democrat on where we are here.
Well, I don't think any Republican should be surprised. I mean, this president has treated every relationship he has as disposable. Go back to the primary. Go back to his career in business. Look at his career in politics. Look at how he's governed from the White House. Everyone's disposable, whether it's staff or cabinet members, supporters in the past. I mean, Chris Christie was one of his most fervent supporters. He threw him over. So no Republican should really be surprised that President Trump has decided, hey, my numbers are really down. People don't like the way I'm governing. What's the best way for me to get a quick win? Let me go and cut a deal with Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi. I don't think anyone should be surprised by that.
Well, speaking of that, and in your words, these disposable relationships, Sahil, so would that help Democrats suddenly feel more emboldened to work with him on other issues, infrastructure reforms, for example?
Sure. Well, Democrats are certainly trying to take advantage of the fact that Trump seems to be frustrated with his own Republican Party leadership. He's annoyed with the fact that Speaker Ryan and Senator McConnell have not been able to land a bill on his desk to repeal the Affordable Care Act despite 7 years of promises. 7 months and no action on that, and he cuts a deal with, as he calls them, Chuck and Nancy, and 2 days later he signs a bill. He's also gotten a lot of favorable coverage for the bipartisanship outreach, which he clearly seems to like. So without a doubt, Schumer and Pelosi are trying to take advantage of this to cut a deal, to preserve, to codify the DACA program, some version of the DREAM Act that protects the people who came here as minors and who have met these conditions right now. Where this goes remains unclear. This is a very, very explosive issue for Republicans. I've spoken to leadership aides in the House and the Senate who say the president needs to lead on this. He needs to put out a proposal, own it, and give political cover to Republicans in order for them to feel comfortable with this. Most of the Republican base supports letting these people stay here, but the opposition, it's small. It's only about 15% that wants them to go. But those are the energized ones. Those are the passionate, vocal people.
Talk about explosive.
That's what they're dealing with.
Yeah, talk about explosive, passionate, and everything. You know, you've got his base, but then you also have these Republicans who are just furious. You got Ann Coulter, who tweeted a link to a piece that she wrote shortly after Election Day. So she said, if he breaks a major campaign promise, his supporters will turn on him with a blind ferocity, dwarfing their rage towards Jeb, because Trump's the more exquisite con. He will have duped them, and he will never, ever, ever get them back. Cornell, is that the case? Or is there just, you know, are they so anchored to Donald Trump that this is just going to be another blip and then they'll move on and still stick with him?
Well, you know, this is a tough one because this is actually what I feel is at the core of Donald Trump's brand, right? All these other attacks on him, you know, it just bounce off of him. But at the core of his brand is this nationalism. So I think some of the critics might be right here, right, where this is all this resentment. And by the way, the march that's going on right now, the pro-Trump march, is, let me see, the Protection for Traditional American Culture march, right? So, which, by the way, that has nothing to do with race or immigration, right? But so this is at the core of his brand. So I do think this is a little different than other issues, right? I think if he undermines what is at the core of his brand, it does become problematic. I don't think any other issue, he could flip-flop on almost any other issue, but on these issues that have to do with immigration and diversity in this country and what some people feel is a traditional culture in this country, this becomes problematic because it undermines his brand.
Well, exactly. You have Senate Majority Whip John Cornyn of Texas, who told the New York Times this week, listen to this, and you've got an unconventional president who is not limited to what the conventions of political behavior are among office holders. He is shaking things up. So speaking of that, is that what his supporters wanted? Is this what they're, you know, what they're ultimately saying we wanted, and we're seeing it?
You know what's interesting to me, and I know a lot of my fellow conservatives have begun to feel that Democrats lost the general election, but they won the presidency. And that's what it's beginning to look like when you see President Trump excluding Republicans out of the deal-making process. I understand that there may be some frustration felt, but when I started seeing congressional Democrats and Democratic political pundits on television praising Trump as a deal-maker, hide your kids, hide your wife, because there's something really going on, and it's problematic on many, many levels. If you look at the tweets from Ann Coulter and you begin to look at some of the commentary that's coming from her 1+ million followers, you'll notice that some of them are still highly in the Trump base. I think that this is an issue that which he won the election. Obviously, this is immigration is one of the biggest issues. I think it's something that he should have handed off to Congress because they are the ones that create immigration policy in this country. But his continuation of leaving Republicans out the fold is going to cost them, and there's no question about that in my mind.
We all read Congressman Steve King of Iowa saying Trump base is blown up, destroyed, irreparable, and disillusioned beyond repair. I wish we could go on and on, but we can't. But I'm glad we got all of you in here. Great conversation, guys. Thank you. Sahil, Kapur, Gianno, Caldwell, Cornell Belcher, and Joel Payne. To all of you, thank you. We want to turn now to the protests in Washington and also the protests in St. Louis, where police have arrested more than 30 people since yesterday when a judge acquitted a former